346 people are dead because Boeing wanted to save money on pilot training. That is not an exaggeration. That is not a metaphor. That is what happened. And the story of how the most trusted name in aviation became a company that literally could not keep its planes in the sky is one of the most disturbing corporate collapses in American history. You're watching the fallen empire. For most of the 20th century, Boeing was America, the company that won World War II, that put men on the moon, that built the 747 and connected the entire planet. Engineers ran Boeing. The culture was obsessive, meticulous, almost religious about safety. There was a saying inside the company, "If it's not Boeing, I'm not going." Pilots trusted them with their lives. Airlines trusted them with their fleets. Governments trusted them with national defense. Boeing was untouchable. Then, in 1997, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas. On paper, Boeing acquired them. In reality, McDonnell Douglas executives took over Boeing from the inside. Harry Stonecipher, the former McDonnell Douglas CEO, became Boeing's president and later its CEO, and he brought a completely different philosophy. McDonnell Douglas had been a company in decline, a company that had lost the commercial aviation race. But its executives were ruthless cost-cutters, Wall Street favorites, the kind of leaders who measured success in quarterly earnings, not engineering breakthroughs. But here's where it gets insane. Boeing moved its headquarters from Seattle, where the planes were actually built, to Chicago. The message was clear. Leadership wanted distance from the factory floor. They didn't want engineers knocking on their doors with problems. They wanted clean spreadsheets and rising stock prices. And they got them. Boeing's stock soared. Shareholders loved it. The board loved it. Everyone loved it except the people who actually built the airplanes. Inside Boeing, the culture rotted from the inside out. Engineers who raised safety concerns were sidelined. Quality inspectors were pressured to approve parts they knew were defective. The company outsourced massive portions of its supply chain to cut costs. The 787 Dreamliner was supposed to be a revolutionary aircraft, but it was plagued with battery fires, manufacturing defects, and delays that cost Boeing billions. That should have been the warning sign. Nobody listened. And that's not even the craziest part. In 2011, Airbus launched the A320neo, a fuel-efficient update to its best-selling narrow-body jet. Boeing had two choices: design a brand new airplane, which would take years and cost tens of billions, or slap new, larger engines onto the existing 737 design, a plane that first flew in 1967. Boeing chose the cheap option. The 737 MAX was born. But those bigger engines didn't fit under the old 737's low-slung wings. So Boeing moved them forward and up, which changed the plane's aerodynamics. At certain angles of attack, the MAX had a tendency to pitch nose up, which could lead to a stall. The fix: software. Boeing created the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS, a program that would automatically push the nose down if sensors detected the plane pitching too high. One sensor, a single point of failure on a commercial aircraft carrying hundreds of souls. And Boeing didn't tell the pilots about it. They deliberately kept MCAS out of the flight manuals, because if pilots needed new training, airlines would choose the Airbus instead. The entire selling point of the MAX was that any pilot who could fly the old 737 could fly this one with no additional simulator time. Here's where people start dying. October 29, 2018. Lion Air Flight 610 takes off from Jakarta, Indonesia. 12 minutes later, it nosedives into the Java Sea. All 189 people on board are killed. The cause: a faulty angle of attack sensor fed bad data to MCAS, which repeatedly forced the nose down while the pilots fought to regain control. They never had a chance. They didn't even know what MCAS was. Boeing's response was stunning. They blamed the pilots. They blamed the airline. They issued a bulletin reminding pilots of existing procedures, as if the problem was human error and not a fundamentally flawed system that Boeing had deliberately hidden. The 737 MAX kept flying. 5 months later, March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Same plane, same failure, same desperate fight in the cockpit, same outcome. 157 people dead. The youngest was a 9-month-old baby. Now pay attention to what happened next, because this is where Boeing's arrogance reached criminal levels. After the Ethiopian crash, every country on Earth grounded the 737 MAX except the United States. The FAA, the regulator that was supposed to protect the flying public, waited 3 more days before grounding the plane. Why? Because the FAA had delegated much of the MAX's safety certification to Boeing itself. The fox had been guarding the henhouse for years, and the FAA knew it. Boeing spent over $60 billion on stock buybacks between 2013 and 2019. $60 billion that could have funded new aircraft designs, better manufacturing, improved safety systems. Instead, it went to inflating the stock price while the planes fell out of the sky. Today, Boeing exists in a kind of corporate purgatory. Too big to fail, too broken to trust. The U.S. government needs Boeing for defense contracts, for space programs, for the industrial base. The Starliner capsule, Boeing's spacecraft designed to carry astronauts to the International Space Station, suffered thruster failures and helium leaks during its first crewed flight in 2024, stranding astronauts on the ISS for months longer than planned. Even in space, Boeing couldn't deliver, but the flying public knows the truth now. Everyone knows. Boeing chose money over lives, and when people died, they lied about it. When they got caught lying, they paid a fine. When the fine didn't fix anything, more planes broke. The engineers who built the 747 would not recognize this company. The pilots who once said, "If it's not Boeing, I'm not going," now check which aircraft they're boarding before they get on. And somewhere in the wreckage of Lion Air 610 and Ethiopian Airlines 302, 346 stories ended so that Boeing's stock price could go up by a few points. The McDonnell Douglas merger was supposed to make Boeing stronger. Instead, it infected the company with a culture that valued financial engineering over actual engineering. The accountants won, the engineers lost, and 346 people who boarded commercial flights expecting to arrive safely never made it home. That is the Boeing story. That is what happens when you let Wall Street run an engineering company. Subscribe to The Fallen Empire. Every empire has a story. Most have an ending. Congressional investigations revealed the full horror. Internal Boeing emails showed employees joking about the plane's safety issues. One engineer wrote that he would never let his family fly on the MAX. Another said the plane was designed by clowns, who in turn are supervised by monkeys. Boeing had known about the MCS risks. They had calculated that fixing the system properly would cost too much and take too long. They chose profit over people, and 346 human beings paid for that choice with their lives. But wait, it gets worse. Boeing entered a deferred prosecution agreement in 2021, paying $2.5 billion to settle fraud charges. The families of the dead got $500 million. Boeing's executives got to keep their jobs. Nobody went to prison. Not one person. 346 people dead. And not a single Boeing executive spent a single night in a jail cell. Then in January 2024, an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 lost a door plug mid-flight. A section of the fuselage simply blew out at 16,000 feet. Passengers' phones and clothing were sucked out of the aircraft. By pure miracle, the seat next to the hole was empty. Nobody died, but the message was unmistakable. Boeing still could not build a safe airplane. The aftermath was devastating. Whistleblowers came forward describing a factory floor in chaos. Workers at Boeing's Renton facility described finding tools, rags, and debris inside finished aircraft. Quality inspectors reported being pressured to sign off on defective work. 2 Boeing whistleblowers, John Barnett and Joshua Dean, both died under suspicious circumstances in 2024 while their cases against Boeing were still active. Barnett was found dead from a supposedly self-inflicted gunshot wound during a break in his deposition against Boeing. And here's the final gut punch. Boeing's stock, which peaked above $440 in 2019, cratered. The company burned through tens of billions in cash. Its credit rating teetered on the edge of junk status. In 2024, the Department of Justice determined that Boeing had violated the terms of its deferred prosecution agreement, opening the door to full criminal prosecution. The company that once represented the absolute pinnacle of American engineering and innovation had become a symbol of everything wrong with modern corporate America. The triumph of shareholders over stakeholders, of cost-cutting over craftsmanship, of stock buybacks over safety. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, smash that subscribe button. Every week on The Fallen Empire, we dig into the corporate giants that collapsed, the founders who flew too close to the sun, and the hubris that brought them down. The next one will make Boeing look small. Stay with us.